It's time to start. First of all, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for being here to attend the workshop. Our topic today is about learner autonomy, okay, in our classrooms, in EFL, ESL classrooms. At the beginning, this is a very simple introduction of the steps or the main issues that we are going to go through today. The first part will be some questions and answers about just to help you think of our learners and their need to be autonomous in ESL. And then we are going to learn.
People are, can I ask you one simple question? I read somewhere that in order for the learners to be autonomous, you need to have teacher autonomy. Before learner autonomy,
I would say that it's something like a habit that needs to be developed in both the teacher and the student as well. So it's a process that takes time. So you need to train your students to do it. It's not. You need, first of all, you need to be well trained to do it.
yourself.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. So these are the main points that we are going to cover today. As I told you at the beginning, we are going to have questions to help us think of our students' need to autonomy. The next part will be a definition, what is autonomous learning? And of course, we're going through some different writers, introduce the topic in different points of view. And then David Newman suggested a program. This program contains 9 steps to learner autonomy and what should be done in each step. Teacher's role as a learner in learner autonomy, so we're going to have a look also at the teacher's role. And then activities that we can apply inside the classroom that help our students build up the knowledge of autonomy. And then the last question is, we're going to have a look at how or is it possible to evaluate our students' learner autonomy or no. Okay, there are also some different points of view here. At the beginning, I'm going to ask you, do you agree with the saying? You can lead a horse to water, but you cannot ask or force it to drink.
Yes, I agree. I completely agree.
Yes, definitely. We all agree to this. Another saying by Galileo says, you cannot teach a man anything. You can only help him find it within himself. Okay? So we cannot force our students to learn something. All what we can do is to guide them through the learning process and then let them discover it on their own way. So in language teaching, teachers can provide all the necessary circumstances, tools, pictures, materials, but again, we cannot force the students to learn unless the students are really willing to contribute, they are willing to take the initiative to do something concerning their own learning. Do you think that our students spend enough time to learn a second language? I want you to think of our students here in the ELI. Although we have one of the biggest programs in the Middle East, we spend like 18 hours a week teaching English to our students. In many other places, they teach like 2 or 3 hours. We teach 3 to 4 hours a day. So do you think our students, in spite of all this huge amount of time they spend in the classrooms, is enough? They have enough time or enough exposure to the language? Or do you think they need more or less?
I think you need to say that university spends enough time.
Yeah, I'm talking about us.
No.
About ELI.
I agree, ELI spends a lot of time.
A lot of time. So I think our students have enough time to learn the language. They don't need anything extra.
I said ELI spends enough time.
My question is about the learners, not the ELI.
They don't.
They do spend enough time here. So you think that your students don't need enough time? They don't need more time. You don't think so?
Most of the time they're dozing in the class, they're not paying attention, they're like totally out of it, so I don't think they're
So they still need to do something outside the classroom?
yeah.
Yes, they do.
I would say that this is an EFM environment.
They find classroom and teacher both very boring.
Even time itself that we have in class, for example, to conduct activities, to give students time, to practice things and to be autonomous is not enough. Even this time is not. Whatever, if in addition to this, students don't, as they said, especially repeating, so they feel they don't feel interested, for example, in the lesson. They don't use their real time in class, for example, to learn. In addition to that, also outside the class, students, generally speaking, they don't spend time learning or studying.
I would say that during the 4 hours that you spend in the classroom, our students, focus for like 20, 30 minutes. Okay, they listen to the teacher for some time, but they cannot be concentrating or listening all the time. And how much participation, how much input they give during these 4 hours. This is also another issue. So not everything can be taught in class. This is what Newton suggests. Even if it could, a teacher will not always be around when the students use the language in real-life situations. So you will not be there when students make mistakes outside the classroom. You can teach your students to practice something, to make a conversation in a cafe, in a restaurant, but actually when they go out to the real world, they will make mistakes, and you will not be there to correct their mistakes.
It's an informal context, and in an informal context, you don't need to correct a mistake. As long as the message goes through, you don't need to correct it.
But we are talking about students learning a new language. We're not just talking about practicing. I have seen some Americans who always say, he has a car. They don't say he has a car. And when I asked them this question, how can you say this? And you say it in front of your students, they said, no problem. As long as they get the message, it's okay. So that's not exactly what we need to teach our students. We need to teach them the correct format. We need to raise the awareness inside our students that, yeah, I've done something wrong and I'd like to correct it.
Much focus on form would be inhibiting, If you focus too much on mistakes, they would be inhibited. They don't like to talk. So if I say a word and they make a mistake, the teacher will penalize me or interrupt me. So they just...
That's why we say the teacher will not be there. The teacher will not be there to evaluate, to judge whatever they say. The teacher just provides some input in the classroom, and the students will practice outside the classroom. What we need is our students to have like some aware conscious that they have done something wrong. I remember when I was a student at university, I used to speak to myself in front of the mirror, sometimes record myself and see, because I started learning English at university stage, so I really practiced a lot, and I used to record myself and see what grammatical mistakes did I make, what pronunciation mistakes that I make. So that's important. I was aware that I could be making mistakes, why not? And then,
but focusing more on accuracy might hurt the fluency. So outside the classroom, the main important thing is that communication. And language is communication.
of course.
But it's a classroom, of course. It's a conscious process and we have to pay attention to the rules and to whatever.
But again, I would like to look at the format that we need our students to reach both accuracy and fluency in learning English, not just the fluency.
The input.
Yes, yes. Okay, I want them to be aware that they might make something wrong and they need to find out the solution to this problem. I want them, after making a conversation and make a mistake, to rethink about it and find the mistakes that they make and then try to correct these mistakes on their own way. Students need to develop their own strategies and need to be trained to become autonomous learners. Do you complain about your students' level of achievements?
Yeah, of course. I would say that's my answer.
Okay.
It's not all their fault.
I've been to many classes and I've seen so many teachers complaining about students' level, especially before an observation. They always come and say, my students are repeating for the third time, they don't want to listen, they are not really interested in learning a new language. So these things sometimes happen. You can find some teachers, complain that the students are lazy and they never do their homework sometimes. They never remember anything I teach them. We did the present perfect yesterday, and then again when we were practicing today, most students got it wrong. I tell them to study hard, but they don't care. I will have to give them more tests, I have to re-explain the lesson again, I have to provide more exercises for my students to be ready for the exam. So, can our students make choices or take decisions to improve their own learning? Do you think our students are aware of this? They can take these decisions?
No, they can't.
They can't.
think so.
Why? Why can't they? Because they are not trained to do it.
Yeah,
They should be.
Yes, because they don't know how to do it. They have never given the opportunity to take decisions for themselves.
The metacognitive skills are.
Yes, exactly. So research suggests that choice and freedom are major issues in the 21st century learning process. Students who can choose the way they learn, the words they need, and the topic they choose learn more effectively than the ones who were told what to do. So you need to give them some kind of responsibility in the classroom, which let them choose the exercises, the activities that they want to do, and then see how good they are. Give them the responsibility, make them feel that they are responsible of their own learning process. When you make a choice, you are responsible for it. The problem is providing the choices as a teacher. So when you teach the same topic for so many students, what you need to care about is providing these choices to your students. Okay? And responsibility in learning means lifelong learning. What makes a responsible learner in your own point of view? If we want to make, how can you describe a responsible learner?
Motivated.
A motivated one?
Self-motivated.
Self-motivated?
The awareness of
Yes.
the importance of the stage that he's going through.
Okay, a person who's aware.
Target oriented. Has a target and he needs to achieve that. By
Okay.
some means.
Yes, exactly. He has got a target and he is working for it.
And as you mentioned, yeah, you should have a choice.
Yes, they have the ability to take decisions and to choose things or materials for themselves. Is it the student who does his homework and follow instructions? Do you think that this is a responsible student, follow instructions and does homework? No, not exactly. Is he a good team worker? Not exactly. Is he the diligent and obedient one? Again, no. In fact, they are not the model ones. Responsible students are not the model students. Okay? They are the learners who accept the idea that their own effort is crucial to progress in learning and behave accordingly. Okay? They know that their effort to learn language is the main issue. Okay? Not just the teacher, it's not just the curriculum, it's me. It's all about me. It's all about my level of achievement. It's all about the effort that I will exert to learn a new language. They don't have to be keen in teamwork. They may or may not be willing to contribute, but they are always there, and they always contribute because they know that this is beneficial to them and to other students as well. They may not always do the homework, but whenever they fail to do the homework, they are aware of missing an opportunity to expand their knowledge. So they cognitively aware that they did something wrong and they missed an important opportunity to learn something, and if they miss it this time, they will be keen on doing it the next time.
Self-conscious.
Yes. So what is autonomous learning in your point of view? Can you try to tell me what do you think is autonomous
One
learning?
who takes charge of his own learning, how he learns it, from where he learns it, he's going to learn.
A student aware of what and
How to learn,
And how to learn?
from where to learn.
okay.
Independent also.
Yeah, independent learning. Yes.
Responsibility.
Responsibility.
Okay.
He's dependent.
It's the willing to learn actively.
Yes, it's the desire, the will to learn actively. Okay. This is one of the definitions. It's the competence to develop as a self-determined, socially responsible, and a critically aware participant. So the students are not receivers of the knowledge, they are actually participants in the language learning process. They are also responsible, okay, and critically aware. Okay, so they know what to study, what not to study, what they need, what they don't need. Okay, in and beyond educational environment, in the classrooms and outside the classrooms, within a vision of education as interpersonal empowerment and social transformation. So we have in mind that what I am doing here is something important for my future as well. Another definition here is the ability to take charge of one's own learning, to take charge, to take responsibility, to take decision. Okay, the central issue here is decision making in the learning process. This implies a change in both the roles of the teacher and the student. This definition is self-directed learning, in which the students take responsibility for their own learning. It takes place outside the classroom in the students' own time. So it's self-directed. It's the students doing it on their own. Okay, they choose the material. They go outside and look for information themselves. Based on these definitions, can you try to complete this statement? In autonomous learning, the learners what? Their goals. Set their goals, choose their goals, identify, yes. Okay, exactly. They choose their goals or set their goals. They want the teaching methods and materials.
They are aware.
Select. They are aware of the materials. Yes, they select. They could be aware, but they may not choose. Okay. They control it too. They want their progress. Monitor, exactly, and evaluate. Yes, they evaluate their progress. They are motivated, independent, exactly, or self-reliant. Okay, this was developed. This is a form that was developed by Bruna Murphy. She was my professor at the University of Edinburgh. She developed this form of how to make your students, or how to push your students to be independent learners. Okay. The first stage said a psychological preparation. You need to change the students' perception, okay, of the language learning first. You need to change their expectations of what they are going to be doing in the classrooms and outside the classrooms as well. So you need to change their thinking of the learning process first. The next stage is practical preparation. You need to provide them the tools, the strategies, the methods that they can use outside the classrooms. So you need to change their thinking first, and then provide them with the tools that they can use outside the classroom to improve their own learning. David Noonan suggested a program of 9 steps. In this worksheet, I gave you the steps in groups of 3. I want you to have a look at these steps. They are not in the correct order, but I want you to think is to just quickly look at these steps and try to put them in the right order. Okay? Okay. Let's start. Okay, let's have a look. What do you think is the first stage? The first step? Raise awareness. No. The first step is to make instructions goals. Yes, to make instruction goals clear to the learners. This is the first stage. When you start designing a language course, the first thing we look at is the goal. What do we need our students by the end of the course to achieve? Okay, so this is the first step you need to have at the beginning. The teacher needs to set the goals at the beginning of the lesson or unit clear to the students. So the students need to know, what are we going to learn from this specific lesson or unit? Okay, by the end of this lesson you will be able to, the students need to know, what are we going to learn from it? What are we going to be able to do by the end of this?
Are those the SLOs? That you call
Yes,
SLOs?
exactly. These are our SLOs, yes. Okay. You can add a checklist at the end of the lesson to check the achievement of these goals. By the end of the lesson, you can distribute a questionnaire or a checklist to see if the students were able to achieve the goals or not. An example by Nuran here, he says you can review the language skills practiced in the units by this. Like for example, you can ask your students, can you make comparisons? They can say yes, little, or not yet. If they can, okay, provide an example to prove that you have already learned this skill. Okay, can you make plans? Say yes, little, or not yet. If you can, okay, provide an example. So that's a proof that the students have already learned something. The next stage is allowing learners to choose their own goals. I'm not actually sure how applicable could that be in our context. It could be done, I would say, with advanced students, with level 4 students in modules 1 and 2, who are really good students, and they can look at the goals and they can modify, change these goals. They say, yeah, we can learn this in this way, or we cannot learn this in this way. I would prefer this way. So I think we need more responsible students or more advanced students to be able to do this step. The next step is giving learners a voice, would be to allow learners to create their own goals and content. An interesting and practical way of involving learners at this level is reported by Parkson and Sullivan. They report on the notion of the action meeting. They ask the students to make meetings. Okay, in these meetings, students were able to look at the goals that were already set by the program or by the institution, and then they can see, modify, or change these goals.
Excuse me?
Yes?
Do we not, I mean, sometimes do it in the classroom when the teachers ask, what do you want to be, for example, in the future? They say, I want to be a doctor. So what do you want, what do you need to be a doctor? I need to, have good proficiency in the language, and then I need to have, diploma or some certificate or degree in medicine. So this is setting the goal, isn't it?
Oh, this is setting the goal in life. But I'm talking about the setting in language.
He's talking about
yes.
intrinsic and extrinsic motivation.
Yes, we are going. It's coming here too. Yes. Okay. Step 3 is to encourage learners to use the language outside the classrooms, not just inside the classrooms. Of course, you can use technology, internet, and things like this. And these are some important points that I got from the ELI website. How can you improve? How can I improve my English? The top 10 tips. I downloaded it from the ELI website. There are some tips, of course, they are explained more in the handout in the website, but here I just got it in short. like keeping diary, start a vocabulary book, write words everywhere, write new sentences with your new words, watch English language films, talk to yourself in English, work on your grammar, read about your interests in English, don't be afraid of making mistakes when you speak, have fun, okay? Try to make learning process fun. The next step, raise awareness of the learning process, okay? You need to change the students' attitude from language receivers to language or to knowledge seekers, okay? So, for example, the teacher can provide some learning strategies such as classifying words. Ask students to put the words in columns. These are the words related to the classroom. These are things we can find in a restaurant or in a cafe. These are the adjectives that we can use to describe a person. Okay, or they can use mind mapping. Like sometimes we have things like this in the course book. Do you remember the unit where you need to describe food, and there's the word food in the middle, and there are so many adjectives around it that you can use to describe the word food or people? Okay, yes. Help learners identify their own preferred style and strategies. After your students have already been exposed to different learning strategies, let them choose which one they like better, which one would serve their purpose better. Okay, so you need to guide them through the strategies that best suit them. Step 6 is to encourage learners' choice. Let them choose. If you are given, like for example, 2 reading passages in the book, ask them which reading passage would you like to do. If there are 5 questions to a reading passage, ask students to choose only 3 to answer. Okay?
I really appreciate the ideas, but the point is that how relevant are they to our context? Like, can we give students this option to choose the passage and they can
Why not?
read? Because in exam, if they choose one and they don't read the other one, it's possible that they might not find the same passage in exam. So
no, it's there in the book. Sometimes there are 3 passages, and you divide students into groups of 3, and then you ask students, you read the first passage, you read the second passage. Why don't you give, instead of you distribute rules, just ask them to choose the passage that they would prefer to read. Okay? And instead of asking all students to answer all the questions, ask them to answer only 3. And instead of giving homework of 2 pages, now do which page would you like to do? Which exercise would you prefer to do? Okay, which 2?
Create the space as much as possible.
Yes, we are just trying to get them trained on how to choose materials for themselves. We don't need to keep forcing them, this is what you need to do. Okay, so teachers can always start with simple mode of decision making, such as asking students to read or listen to the text first. So which one would you like to do? Listen first or read first? Or asking each group to choose one of the reading passages and answer the questions about it. Allow learners to generate their own tasks. Okay, after you have set the goals, you train some students on the strategy that they will be able to use. Now it's time for them to set their own tasks, to choose the materials that they would like to use. Okay, so after decision making,
again, I can make the same point that the teacher needs to be autonomous himself, or he needs to learn that autonomy to be a skill, to be within himself. It's like, you can't tell a person to feel free, mentally and within his heart, unless you are a free man yourself.
of course, yes. We cannot give something that we don't have. Yes. So what we need to be trained to train our students. But again, I'm talking about things that we can apply in the classroom, because we have already missed the opportunity in our classrooms when we were students. Now, maybe these strategies were not there when we were still students, but now they are here and they're available. We can provide them to our students. We don't want to miss the chance because we didn't get it. Okay? These are some of the examples of the teacher's roles. The first one is raising awareness. You need students to look at the language process, at what happens in the classroom, how much active are they in their classrooms. You can ask surveys or questions like this. I always or usually or sometimes do my homework, so that will make them think, I do it or not, and how often do I do it? I come to class on time or no? How often do they come on time to the classroom? How often do they use their mobile phones in the classroom? How often do they raise their hands and answer teachers' questions? Okay, so that will help them cognitively think, yes, I am active. I participate in my learning process, or no, I don't. I'm just sitting there watching and doing nothing. So the teacher is not the person to be blamed. I should blame myself if I didn't get the grades I'm supposed to get. The next one, again back to the idea of pulling the horse or taking the horse to a place to drink, and yeah, what if the horse itself is not thirsty? What if they lack motivation? If our students are not motivated enough to learn the language, we need to motivate them, okay? Both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation, of course, is something that comes from the inside. Okay, the students need to feel the pleasure, the joy, the pride of learning something new, of being able to speak another language. Extrinsic motivation is something that comes from the world outside them, like for example, the rewards, the pocket money or the salary that they get from the university every month. Rewards or getting a good job in the future, getting a good salary in the future. This is extrinsic motivation, and you need to keep pushing these things, reminding your students that this language learning is important to them. The teacher serves as a facilitator, as you mentioned, or a counselor in different class situations increasingly. You cannot change your class dramatically. Yes?
Yeah, I take extrinsic motivation as the factor that compels them to join a language school. Why they are here. For example, the career goals, that is extrinsic motivation.
Yes.
Yeah, for example, in one of my classes, I asked them a question, what kind of job do you want to do when you finish your school? 80% of them a part-time job.
Okay.
So extrinsic motivation is the purpose why they are in school, to me.
It's not just this, actually. I mean, it's their goals for the future. It's the rewards that they might get from their parents if they achieve something good, if they get good marks. Some students are promised to get a car, a new car, if they achieve well, or if they join a specific college. Yeah, this is extrinsic motivation.
Then it can be subdivided, like studying abroad and going to the school of medicine, going to the school of law.
Yeah, this is also extrinsic motivation.
I think the most immediate extrinsic motivation is the grade itself.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what they study. So if you know how to use the grade or the mark to push them through work, I think that's something.
Of course, yes. Exactly. Okay, the teacher needs to confront himself with the extreme views of traditional learning process with the learner-centered approach. You want to look at this chart and put yourself in one of these places. This is a teacher-centered approach. The teacher here thinks that I have all the information, which is not true. In the learner-centered approach, the teacher says that the syllabus and what needs to be achieved are there for us to share. I'm not the only source of information. The information, the book, the course book, the videos, the CDs, the audios, they're all there so we can exchange and share this information. It's not just for me to deliver. It's my job.
Are we to think about these things in our context, or do we need to think hypothetically?
No, in your context, of course. Here, in the ELI, instead of being the main source of information to your students, tell them that this book is there for you to study. It's not for me to give it to you. Okay? The website of the ELI is there so that you can get information from it. It's not just, or the internet is there so you can search for information. I'm not going to provide you everything you need.
What about instruction for the teachers to let the students see the ELI mission, ELI vision, make them cram it, make them, the students should memorize it. You should present it every time the module starts.
The mission and the vision is something really broad. It's not. It has nothing to do with this. This is the teacher's perception in the classroom. What am I doing with my students? Okay. Yeah. This is the goal, this is the mission, this is the vision of the ELI for everybody to know that we are going through this, but how are we going through it? Okay, this is the teacher's job to deliver to the students. It's my job to transmit knowledge to you. No. In learner-centered approach, I'm here to facilitate and assist learning. I'm responsible for your learning, of course not. You are responsible, so if you get low marks in English, so that's because of you, because you didn't ask me, because you didn't come well prepared for each classroom. As a professional, it's my job to make all decisions. No, in a learner-centered approach, I trust your decisions. You can take decisions for your own learning process, and you can improve accordingly. Changing attitude. It's a long process, and of course it takes time and practice to change the student's perception of the language as something that they get only from the teacher or from this limited course book. So that takes time, of course. Change learners' belief in the student's role from knowledge receivers, as I said before, to knowledge seekers. Okay, you can transfer roles, delegate to your students, give them the time to take decisions, give them time to think, give them the option to choose. Okay, so let them choose the material and correct their own mistakes. It requires change also in the classroom management, because I used to be in control of everything. This is activity 1. Everybody should start right now doing the activity. But now, no. Choose an activity and start working on it. So the responsibility now is more on the student. There will be more, I can say, noise in the classroom, so you need to be aware that students are going to discuss in pairs or in groups which activity they are going to start doing first. Give them the freedom to take decisions and choose or design their own tasks. Help learners identify their own preferred style and strategy. For example, how often do your students use an English dictionary? How often do they use English grammar book, video, camera, computer, radio and TV programs, English course books, magazines? Okay, so these are all things that help students think, yeah, I will learn from the movies. I have seen some students who really speak very, very good English because of watching movies, because they listen to the radio and they acquire the language. Yes, you need to demonstrate tasks. Before asking students to do something outside the classroom, you need to teach them, you need to tell them how could it be done inside the classroom first. So it's not enough to talk about what students can do at home. They need concrete examples. If you're going to use the internet, if you ask them to use different websites, okay, show them some websites. These are very useful websites that you can use outside the classroom. These are very good educational videos that you can use. Again, what language are your students thinking in? Try to activate their inner voice. Let them think in English. Start to think consciously in English. It moves to the subconscious. When the students start thinking in English, okay, like for example, F is a very good example. If I were a millionaire, if I were in Dubai right now, what would you do? Okay, so ask students to think in English. They don't have to say it, but maybe after thinking for a while, they could discuss this in groups. So aim for thinking in the unconscious, I mean dreaming in English, encouraging students to have imaginary conversations. Yeah, these are some examples. Like for example, look around you. How many words or how many things can you name in English around the classroom? Okay, try to describe these items. Try to put an adjective next to each noun, and then try to put it into sentences. So you move from words to a couple of words, to phrases, and to sentences. Okay, choices. Provide choices to your students. Do you all, of course we all do this, give all students the same activities or the same exercises to do in the classroom or outside the classroom if it's homework? But why? Because it's easier to mark. I give homework to all students, page 1 and 2 are homework, so when you're done, I'll be here quickly go through the answers. All students will be following, checking yes or no. Okay, so it's easier to check. Students can get peer support if they have problems. They can ask their classmates because they are sharing the same homework. Students' progress or abilities can be compared within a group. So I can compare, yeah, this student has done well, but that student hasn't. Check exactly how each student understood the task. But why not? Why don't we give the same homework to all students? Because it's more personalized learning. You give students to choose something that is more related to them. Differentiation in terms of tasks and skills. Not all our students can do well in all the activity. Some students can do really well if the activity is supported with pictures. Okay, if the activity is multiple choice, if it's multiple choice exercise. But if it's deduction exercise, no, not many students will be able to do this. Okay, so they can choose according to their ability as well. Help foster learning independence because they choose the material. For example, for homework, you can ask them to choose an activity from A, B, C, D. Answer 3 of the 5 questions given in page 5 or page 6. Choose one of the 2 topics and talk about it, or 3 or 4 topics. Okay. Another part is to encourage students to set their own tasks and rewards. Let them choose the task. Okay, today we have a topic about Jeddah, so what would you like to be doing related to this topic? Can you do something? Yes, let students, for example, design an ad for a product, okay, or make a propaganda about tourism in Jeddah. Okay, so what would they say about it? And these are, now we are going to start with the activities, okay? Some of the activities that you can use inside the classroom to help your students become more responsible. Like writing a journal, okay? You can ask students to write a journal of everything that happens to them in their classrooms or outside the classrooms on a trip, for example. So it helps them think of what happens in their own life. It helps them think of new vocabulary, search for the meanings of these words if they want to write something, okay? And it also improves the writing ability. Okay. Resource or self-access room. We have a room here, but it's only for teachers. Right now, we don't have self-access room for our students, but it is beneficial and it's used in some other institutions where students can go. They have internet access, they have books, magazines, videos. They can use these materials in their own time. They can read books and use dictionaries. They can use programs and grammar games. They can use TV and radio shows. Okay. You can also encourage students to write sentences using the language covered in the classroom. So this is the list of vocabulary that we used in the classroom or we learned today. What I want you to do is to extend this list of vocabulary into sentences or paragraphs. Yes, take the verbs they have used and make it into a noun or a noun into an adjective and then rewrite the sentence. Okay? Doing it in class first gives the students the confidence to do it at home. So they can do it first in class and then they can practice this outside the classroom. Using the internet and technology, of course, like videos, audio, internet, mobile phones. You can ask them, for example, to like the BBC or CNN or Fox News on their...
Fox News, sure. I'm not sure if we ask them to like Fox News, because
why?
Absolutely, no, I mean, even in America, people don't watch Fox News anymore.
It's just an example. You don't have to like Fox News. For the Saudi Gazette. You can like the Saudi Gazette page. Arab news. Yes. Okay. They can have live Skype chats with their with native speakers. Okay, online or read magazines, and they can provide feedback of what they have learned outside the classroom, in the classroom. The use of camera. You can ask students to take pictures of every single language term they see outside the classroom. Okay, in a magazine, in a shop, anywhere, and then try to come into the classroom and discuss these ideas. Okay? Remind students that they can take photos of the language they see while they're out and about. Encourage them to find out what it means. You can also ask them to show your classmates the pictures of trips, for example, they have, or pictures of a game, a football game that they were playing someday with their classmates, and discuss these ideas in the classroom. Cooperative learning. In groups, you can ask students to do something, like for example, choose an activity. Okay, they can design the activity on their own. Like for example, as I said before, you can ask students to choose a product, whatever the product they like, and they can design an ad to be shown on TV or on the radio, and then ask students to think, what would they say about this product? And they can come out here and act it in front of the class. Okay, inductive learning, asking students or showing an example of, like, for example, a reading passage or talk about a city, but don't give the name of the city, and then ask students what city it is. Talk about a famous person and then ask students, who is this person? Okay, look at today's lesson. For example, you can ask students to look at the lesson or the unit of today and ask them, what is it about? What will you learn from this unit? What is the grammar rule that you're going to learn here? Discovery. Ask your students, or you can exercise where students receive input in the form of text or conversation clues, and then figure out how an expression or a word or a phrase can be used in real words. So this is a passage, or this is a paragraph, or this is an audio. You can ask them to find sentences, words that already used in this text, okay, or in this audio, and ask them when and where can we use it. Okay, problem-solving activities. Show them problems and ask them what can they do if they are in this situation. You can give them the ending of a story and tell them in groups, for example, to think what happened from the beginning till they come to that end. Okay, you can give riddles as well. Role play. Ask your students to play, one of them as a teacher and the other one as a student, as for a pilot and co-pilot, as a flight attendant and a passenger. Okay, things like this. A librarian and a student. Ask them to design ads for a product. Tell them to choose a story like they like and act it out in the classroom. Now, the last part. Can we assess learner autonomy? What do you think?
Yes,
do you think
we
can assess, we can evaluate it?
Of course.
Yeah. What's the need for an evaluation if you are thinking about giving them scores? Why? Just evaluate and give them a feedback.
So how? Okay, if you say, yes, first of all, tell me why. Why we need to evaluate autonomous learning?
To know whether the learner is autonomous or not.
And to see if they're on the right
Because
path.
it's their own learning, it's their own preferred style of learning. They do it outside the classroom.
I think a student, for example, is always shy and inhibited, so he's not an autonomous learner. You need to work on this. So he can't talk well if he's always like inhibited. So he's not a good autonomous learner. We need to work on this.
Okay, you worked on this and you asked students to do some things outside the classroom. Then when they come inside the classroom, how can you evaluate what they have done outside the classroom?
You track it always.
Test their knowledge, their learning as well.
You check their knowledge.
Give them tasks and if they learn feet or not.
Their own.
But when we evaluate learners, we usually have a standardized exam, or something like I can evaluate all the students with the same criteria. But if I ask students to do something outside the classroom and they did it differently, and how can I assess this inside the classroom?
They can do it differently, but of course, task completion is the idea. The perfection of it is not the idea, and giving them score is not the idea. And having a rubric is not an idea of assessment. Assessment will be just a feedback.
Formative assessment.
There is no perfect, very informal.
You want to assess autonomy, it means that you assess performance.
Yes.
Assessing or testing
testing performance is quite different from testing achievement,
Yeah.
which is what we are doing in our.
Well, you can't bring everything that you have done.
That's another
Yes,
way.
yes. I think before you can assess learner autonomy, you need to assess teacher autonomy. How much autonomy does the teacher have first? Second, how much room is there for autonomy in the system or in the program or in the curriculum?
Yeah.
So if teacher has autonomy, if the curriculum allows autonomy, activities where people, for example, teacher and student can select a reading passage, not imposed on them. Teacher and student can, can do this activity, not the activities that are in the pacing guide, if you like. Then maybe here you can start assessing how much autonomy the student has.
Okay, I mean there are actually two different points of view in literature that I'm going to quickly have a look at. The first things that no, we should not assess learner autonomy, we should not evaluate it at all. We say that the measurement and therefore the assessment of autonomy is problematic because autonomy is a multi-dimensional construct. Our students do tasks in different ways, and if we're going to evaluate, we need specific or fixed criteria to evaluate all in the same way, which is difficult here. Although we may be able to identify and list behaviors that demonstrate control over learning, we have little evidence to suggest that autonomy consists of any particular combination of these behaviors. Like for example, you ask your students to have a conversation outside the classroom with, for example, a waiter, or have a Skype chat with one of the native speakers. Can you guarantee that all students make the same conversation, use the same vocabulary?
No, it's not about that.
It's difficult.
He might not be able to do the conversation at all. Okay? And in that case, you can evaluate, okay, he cannot do it, and he's not an autonomous learner.
No, I mean, you can't adopt a holistic approach. You don't test for specific knowledge, but you test for fluency,
For
for
skills.
for accuracy, for speed, for correct, language behavior. These are the criteria.
The conversation on the one.
What vocabulary he uses, what verb tense he uses, no.
Okay.
Can he have a conversation with you?
Yes.
Right, this is a holistic approach.
MashaAllah, we've got some great ideas here. Okay, so another research says autonomous behavior can take different forms depending on age, stage of learning, perceived learning needs, and even the learning context. So again, the context is different, which makes it more difficult and complicated to assess. Benson in 2001 argues that autonomous behavior is essentially self-initiated, so it comes from the student. You cannot force the students to do it, that's why we cannot evaluate it, rather than generate it in response to a task. So you may ask your students to do something, but how can you guarantee that they will do it outside the classroom? So these are the ideas that suggest, no, we should not evaluate. On the other hand, autonomy is a capacity which the students may or may not choose to exercise. If you don't bring it into an assessment program, the majority of students will not consider or will not see its importance. So if they think if you don't evaluate it, students will not do it. The other point of view says assessment influences the decision students make about how as well as what they learn. So assessing autonomy may be essential for its development in an institutional context. So if you don't evaluate it, how can you guarantee that your students will develop their autonomy? Okay. Apart from this argument about whether to evaluate or not evaluate learner autonomy, most researchers or most researchers that I read for suggested using portfolio, okay, in evaluating learning, which I can say that not a really valid evaluation technique that we can use with our students, because sometimes a portfolio is only printed materials, right? So what about, how can you evaluate, how can you keep a portfolio of conversations that students made? Okay.
As a teacher, I can tell from the strategies that the students use in the classroom if it's self-autonomous or not. The byproduct.
Of course,
So
it will be reflected.
Our role as teachers, we train those learners how to that. This is the issue. So it's about the strategies, the techniques, the decision making. So, for example, when a student starts making decisions, taking responsibility for his own learning, I can see that. Yeah, the byproduct strategy is done.
So there are still many different points of view regarding this. Some people say yes, some people say no, and I still believe that here, in our context, it's still difficult to evaluate, but we can only encourage our students. Of course, it will be reflected in the classroom because an autonomous learner will definitely perform better in the classroom. Finally, questions? Do you have any questions regarding this topic?
Yeah, not a question, but just a comment.
Yes.
If you want to integrate it with the assessment, like class observation, there should be some specific marks, like 5% or 10% for class participation. That can be a booster, I think.
Class participation. You mean class participation, but it's not done in the class. We are talking about doing something outside the classroom. So it's still difficult to evaluate and...
We don't have any control over outside the classroom. That's an ideal that we should strive for. But within the classroom, for example here, in real life context, whichever has some components, whichever component has some marks, that is given to paid teachers.
That's why we need to motivate students to do it.
That's my suggestion. More students' autonomy and more empowerment of students will be possible if we assign some marks for class participation.
Okay. Thank you.
First, give the teacher the autonomy. Only then expect learners to have.
Ali insists on teacher autonomy. Teachers first.
You cannot have it, but you cannot give it. As you said it yourself.
Okay.
It seems like if you plant, you grow inside the classroom.
Yes.
It grows outside the classroom. You water.
Of course, yes. This is what you set the ground for in the classroom, and then students can practice it outside the classroom. These are some of the references that I used in this PowerPoint presentation. Hope you enjoyed them, and thank you.